Alright, hello everybody, welcome back. In this video I want to talk about thesis statements because I feel like no matter how many times we cover thesis statements, they're always tricky, they're always kind of a sticking point, and a thesis statement is not a thesis statement is not a thesis statement. So the type of thesis statement that you might use for a persuasive essay or literary analysis or a rhetorical analysis essay is not the same as the type of thesis you'll use for a research essay. Now, in all cases, I would suggest that we start with what we call a working thesis. So, what is a working thesis? A working thesis is simply a sort of right now the thesis is. So, it's something that you're using in the drafting process that is kind of malleable, right? Changeable as you begin to work on your essay. However, as that essay progresses, as you do more research or more reading or more thinking about a topic, that thesis will likely change. I can't reiterate enough that it's far easier to change your thesis to match your paper than to try and change your paper to match your thesis. So part of this, again, the design that I have for the class, we've done the interest area paragraphs to kind of get an idea of what we might want to write about, then the research question and the research project, and then we're going to move into the paper. Now, you didn't need a thesis statement until you start working on the first draft. So moving from a research question to a working thesis does require research. In many ways, the research question is helpful because, well, number one, it provides you with a direction to research. It also should provide you with some keywords that you can use as you go to Academic Search Complete or Google Scholar or whatever you're using to find information. Additionally, your working thesis should be some type of answer to your research question. Again, it may change. That's why it is a working thesis statement. I always am a little bit nervous when students focus on creating a perfect thesis statement too early on. However, if that process has worked for you in the past, go ahead and keep doing it. It's about whatever process works for you. So in this case, my example working thesis is, apocalyptic narratives provide an opportunity for readers and audience members to evaluate the morals and principles that guide modern society while simultaneously taking into account what we view as both good and bad about modern society. Is it perfect? No, it's a little bit clunky, but you know what? I don't have to share this with anybody. I'm just doing it for my own purposes so I know where I'm headed. Now, if my initial research question was, are people interested in apocalyptic narratives because they allow this opportunity to reset society, I now have something that I can move from and create that sort of working thesis. What I want to probably prove is that people like these particular stories because they are optimistic in nature. So that awareness of what I'm trying to prove is something that we're getting at with a research project where you have objectives. And the combination of your research question and your objectives should eventually lead you to a working thesis statement and hopefully to a final thesis statement that you'll have in your essay. So just a quick note on what is commonly called a roadmap thesis statement, because I feel like this is the type of thesis statement that we're taught to write in earlier English classes, middle school, high school, things like that. And it's very formulaic. And I'll lay my case out. So a roadmap thesis would look like this. Apocalyptic stories provide readers with insight into human character, an analysis of societal value, and an evaluation of morality. Now, what would we expect from this paper, right? So we would assume that the first paragraph is going to be about insight, the second is going to be about societal values, and the third is going to be about evaluation of morality. Now, that's all well and good, but it really doesn't take into account nuance, and it doesn't come to sort of a bigger answer to this, which is why do we want to analyze societal values or evaluate morality. So what it becomes is a sort of like choppy chunk of ideas rather than a cohesive whole. And we're aiming for that sophisticated, cohesive whole rather than the separate chunks. If you're comfortable with this type of thesis, you might use it for your first draft and just see how it goes. But my big concern is that it's going to lead us more towards a 5-paragraph essay rather than a 5-section essay where we're exploring a lot of different, more nuanced ideas. Now, the big downside to roadmap thesis statements, or upside, I guess it depends on how you want to think about it. They're good for in-class writing. If you've got an in-class essay, or you've got maybe a speech, or you're working on kind of a zero draft. But they are, I think, personally weak for serious academic work. And really a good thesis represents solid investigation, which is probably more than this is true because of A, B, and C, right? I already kind of covered that. So let's go into some common problems with thesis statements. So these are all things that I do see early on. And so this should hopefully be a refresher. If it's not, so be it, right? Covering it for the first time is better than not covering it at all. So a thesis statement that's a statement of fact is not a good thesis statement, right? So if I just said humans and chimpanzees share 99% of their DNA, that's not a good thesis statement because it's not really arguable, right? A thesis statement should be a claim which is at least debatable, right? I don't really like using the term arguable for a variety of reasons. We could talk about it in a whole other video lecture. But this is just a statement of fact, so most people are just going to go, okay, yeah, biology says that that's true, so we're just going to assume that that's true. Another problem is that the thesis statement is too broad or too vague. So in this case, there are a lot of differences between humans and other mammals, and yes, I see things like this all the time. It's true, there are a lot of differences. What is the implication or the importance of thinking about these differences? Or let's just talk about some specific differences and why they're important to think about. Another one, again, I see pretty often is the thesis statement that is a matter of opinion. So in that case, it would be something like, humans are superior to other mammals in all possible ways. Now, again, if we think back to Toolman, it's really difficult to say in all possible ways because some animals are faster than humans, some are stronger than humans. So again, take into account pushing this as far as you can. All of these are probably okay for a zero draft, but definitely not for a first draft of the essay that you're going to turn in. So, some sample research essays, again, to think about how this works well. And these are from student papers. I do have permission to use these from the students, but I'm not going to provide the students' names just because I feel like that's the best way to do this. They are from previous classes. So the first one, the most vital human activity is storytelling, for it exercises both our memories and imaginations while reinforcing shared values and cultural beliefs for the next generation. Again, we can see where this essay would be heading. It would be proving that storytelling, among other activities, is the most vital or one of the most vital for humans. Could this be pushed further? Sure, this is a great thesis statement for a first draft, and with the knowledge that a student would get additional feedback. Another one, integrating females and male combat units requires a complete paradigm shift, which involves physical and equipment changes, understanding women's psychological and cognitive differences, and eradicating sexual violence. Also, for this one, I'd say this is pretty good. In fact, while it is a little bit of a roadmap thesis, it works well here because the primary claim is that integrating females and male combat units requires a paradigm shift. Cultural, equipment-wise, awareness-wise, a lot of different things go into this. So again, good for a first draft, could be more nuanced for a final draft. And then here's the last one. Dance is one of the most beneficial sports and art forms that children can engage in and is essential to fully developing children's emotional expression and social awareness. Also pretty good. Again, you'll note that this student is using the Toolman model's idea of qualifiers to say it is one of the most beneficials rather than the most beneficial, right? Because we could argue that there are other sports that might also develop these things. Also, this student focused on two things, emotional expression and social awareness, which are very closely related, which allows them to really look at the nuance of these situations. So if you're kind of in that realm, you're probably on the right track. So even though we have the interest area paragraphs, the research question rationale, maybe the research project, we're still pretty far away from a thesis. Right? A solid thesis does evolve over time. You need to find new research. Your opinion on the topic will probably change. You're going to become a little bit more of an expert on the topic, and that will alter things. So when we think about research, where you were when you began your research should not be the same place where you were at the end. Are you going to become an absolute expert? Are you going to be able to read all of the sources and know all of the things? No, and I think it would be unrealistic to think that, since people spend their lives researching many of the topics that you all will be selecting for this. So again, just like the process of research, which takes time, the process of creating a thesis is also going to take time. So if you take nothing else away from this, just be aware that that thesis statement, it's changeable. You're not locked into it. You can reword it, you can rethink it, you can flip it and take the other side of the debate if you want. So again, I think I'll just go through this next little bit quickly so we can kind of keep this shorter than the Toolman video or the models video. If you pause the video, think about crafting a working thesis statement based on your own current thoughts about your topic, what you know now. Again, I really advocate write that thesis statement on a note card or a post-it note. And when you're working on your essay or your research, have that in front of you, right? That is a good reminder. Even if it changes, you can always scratch that out, rewrite it, right? But you've got that in front of you, and it helps you maintain focus on your thesis and your focus. Well, you don't need a thesis for your research project. In fact, please don't include one. Remember that the intro part of the research project can often be repurposed as an intro for your essay, and that's totally fine. It's not self-plagiarism. It's basically just a draft or an iteration. So again, be willing to change your thesis statement. Again, it's far easier to change your thesis statement to match the paper than it is to do the other way around. So I'll go ahead and stop there, and I'll do another quick video about just the research project in general, if I haven't already. In the meantime, if you have questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, or recipes, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all later.